My sister begged me to come save her daughter from her abusive husband, so I did exactly what she asked. I rushed over in the middle of the night and took my terrified niece to safety. 12 hours later, I was in handcuffs, facing 20 years in prison for kidnapping. As the police dragged me away, my niece tried to scream the truth, but her mother's hand clamped over her mouth to silence her. That was the moment I realized this was not a misunderstanding. It was a setup designed to destroy me. I am Zora, 32 years old. To my family, I am just the single disappointment who works security night shifts and lives in a small apartment. They look down on me because I do not have a husband or a big house like my younger sister, Tisha. What they do not know is that I own the city's most elite private intelligence firm, and my net worth is triple theirs combined. I keep my success a secret to avoid their greed, but after last Sunday, I realized that silence was a mistake. When my sister Tisha and her ambitious husband Brad tried to frame me to steal my inheritance, they did not realize they were handing me the evidence to put them behind bars. Before I take you into the interrogation room, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever been punished for doing a good deed. It was 6 in the morning on a Sunday. The city of Atlanta was still sleeping, and I was deep in a dreamless sleep after what I thought was a successful rescue mission. The violent sound of wood splintering shattered the silence. Before I could even process the noise, my bedroom door flew open, and 3 officers were in my room with guns drawn. "Get on the ground! Hands behind your head!" The commands were shouted with such aggression that I froze. I know the law. I deal with law enforcement every day through my company, so I knew that resisting gives them an excuse to use force. I dropped to my knees on the cold carpet, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Officer, what is this about?" I asked, my voice trembling but controlled. "You have the right to remain silent," one of them barked, yanking my arms behind my back with unnecessary force. The cold steel of the handcuffs bit into my wrists, sending a shockwave of reality through my body. This was actually happening. They marched me out into the hallway of my apartment complex, barefoot and wearing only my pajamas. Mrs. Higgins from apartment 4B was peeking through her chain lock, eyes wide with judgment. I wanted to disappear, but then I saw them. My sister, Tisha, was crouching on the hallway floor, sobbing theatrically, her designer mascara running perfectly down her cheeks. "Oh God, my baby! Where is she? What did you do to her, you monster?" Her performance was Oscar-worthy. If I did not know her better, I would have believed her grief was real. Standing right behind her was her husband, Brad. He was wearing a suit, perfectly pressed, as if he was ready for a press conference, not a panicked father searching for a lost child. He was holding his iPhone horizontally, not a hug of relief, but a tackle of possession. She squeezed the girl so hard Lily gasped for air. "You are safe now, baby. Mommy is here. She did not hurt you, did she?" Lily looked confused, her innocent eyes darting between me in handcuffs and her mother in hysterics. "But Mom, you called Auntie Zora. You said I had to go because Daddy was hitting you again." The hallway went silent. The police officer holding my arm loosened his grip slightly, looking at Tisha. For a second, I thought the truth would set me free. But Tisha did not miss a beat. Her hand clamped over Lily's mouth, instantly smothering the rest of the sentence. "Shh, baby. Do not speak. You are in shock. She brainwashed you. She told you to say that, didn't she?" Tisha looked up at the officers, her eyes wide with fake terror. My sister is mentally unstable, officer. She feeds lies to my daughter because she hates our happiness. Please get her out of here before she traumatizes my child anymore. Brad shoved the camera lens inches from my face, a smirk playing on his lips that the camera could not see. You are going away for a long time, Zora. Taking a minor across state lines without parental consent is a federal offense. Say goodbye to your freedom. The officer shoved my head down to put me in the back of the squad car. Through the window, I saw Tisha gripping Lily's arm so tight her knuckles were white, preventing the child from speaking another word. As the heavy door slammed shut, separating me from the only family I had left, I realized my sister had not just betrayed me. She had declared war. And she had no idea who she was fighting against. The air in the interrogation room was colder than the cell. I sat there for 2 hours staring at the scratched metal table before the door finally opened. I expected a stranger, but the man who walked in made my stomach turn. It was Detective Miller. I recognized him instantly from the photos my brother-in-law Brad posted on social media. They played golf together every Saturday at the country club. This was not an impartial investigation. This was a favor between friends. Miller sat down heavily, dropping a thick file on the table. He did not look me in the eye. Instead, he began organizing papers with agonizing slowness. I cut the silence immediately. I want my lawyer, and I want you to check my phone records. My sister called me 20 times last night. She sent me texts begging me to come. The GPS on my phone will prove I went there because she asked me to. Miller finally looked up. A smirk played on his lips, the same arrogant expression Brad always wore when he talked about people from my neighborhood. We already have the phone records, Zora. Tisha provided her phone voluntarily. And frankly, it does not look good for you. He slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a printout of a text conversation. My eyes scanned the page and my blood ran cold. It was a screenshot of messages from my number to Tisha's, but the context was completely gone. All of Tisha's frantic messages crying for help had been deleted. The only thing remaining was my final response, which I had sent after I picked up Lily to let them know she was safe. The text read simply, "I have Lily. You better watch out." Without the previous messages where Tisha threatened to hurt herself if I did not come take the child, my text sounded like a threat. It sounded like a ransom note. "This is manipulated," I said, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. "Tisha deleted her messages before showing you. Check my phone. My phone has the full conversation." Miller leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Your phone is currently evidence in a federal investigation, Zora. It is locked, and until we get a warrant to crack it, we have to go by the victim's testimony and the evidence she provided. And right now the evidence says you are a bitter woman who stole a child to terrorize her sister." I stared at him. I knew exactly what was happening. Accessing my phone would take days, maybe weeks. By then, the narrative would be set. Brad would have already spun the story to the press. Miller leaned forward, his tone changing from professional to falsely sympathetic. "Look, Zora, I know Brad. He is a good man. He is a family man. And he is in the middle of a very important campaign for city council. He does not want a scandal. He does not want his sister-in-law going to prison for 20 years. He let the number hang in the air. 20 years. So here is the deal," Miller continued, sliding a plea agreement form toward me. "Brad is willing to drop the kidnapping charges. He does not want to destroy your life. If you sign this, confessing to disorderly conduct and agree to a restraining order and psychiatric evaluation, we can all go home. You get a misdemeanor on your record, no jail time. Brad keeps his reputation clean. Everyone wins. I looked at the paper. It was a trap. If I signed that, I was admitting guilt. I would lose my security clearance. My company, which relied on my clean record, would be destroyed. I would be labeled crazy just like they wanted. And if I do not sign, I asked quietly. Miller's face hardened. The friendly golf buddy mask dropped completely. Then Brad presses charges to the fullest extent of the law. Kidnapping, extortion, child endangerment. With the evidence we have in Tisha's testimony, you will be 45 years old before you see the outside of a prison cell again. The choice is yours, Zora. Be the crazy aunt who made a mistake and got help, or be the felon who lost everything. I looked at the pen he placed next to the paper. My hand reached out, but I was not reaching for the pen. I was reaching for the truth that they thought they had buried. They thought I was just a security guard. They forgot that in my world, information is the only currency that matters. I pushed the paper back across the table. Go to hell, Miller. He stood up, snatching the file. Have it your way, but do not say I did not warn you. When the DA gets here, you are done. He slammed the door, leaving me alone in the silence. But I was not afraid anymore. I was calculating. Because there was one thing Detective Miller did not know. I did not need my phone to prove my innocence. The smartwatch I had put on Lily's wrist the night before had a cloud backup, and it was recording everything, right now. The metal bench in the holding cell was freezing cold, seeping through the thin fabric of my pajamas. Every time the heavy steel door clanged open, my heart jumped into my throat, hoping it was someone coming to save me. I had been sitting there for 3 hours, surrounded by women who looked at me with a mix of pity and suspicion. When the guard finally called my name, I scrambled to my feet. Visitor, he grunted, unlocking the cell door. Relief washed over me so powerful it almost made my knees buckle. It had to be my mother. I knew Tisha and Brad were lost causes, but my mother, Linda, had always been the mediator. She could be critical, and she definitely favored Tisha, but she was still my mother. She would not let her oldest daughter rot in jail for a crime she did not commit. She would tell the police that Tisha had a history of being dramatic. She would fix this. I was led into a small visitation room where a wire mesh barrier separated the inmates from the visitors. My mother was standing on the other side. She looked impeccable in her Sunday church suit, her pearls resting perfectly against her neck. She did not look like a mother whose daughter had just been arrested. She looked like a woman who was inconvenienced by a long line at the grocery store. "Mom," I breathed out, rushing to the mesh. "Thank God you are here. You have to tell them. Tisha is lying. She called me. I have the smartwatch recording, but they won't listen to me. You have to call the family lawyer." I reached my hand out instinctively, wanting to touch her, wanting some form of comfort. But my mother did not reach back. Her face twisted into a mask of pure fury. Before I could process the change in her expression, her hand shot up and slammed against the wire mesh right in front of my face. The loud metallic rattle echoed through the room, making me jump back. "You stupid, selfish girl!" she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. "Do you have any idea what you have done?" I stared at her, my cheek stinging, as if she had actually slapped me. "Mom, what are you talking about? I saved Lily. Tisha left her alone to go out." "Stop it!" my mother snapped, cutting me off. "I do not want to hear your lies. Brad called me. He told me everything. He told me how you broke in. He told me how you made a scene in front of the neighbors. Do you know that reporters are already camping outside their house? Brad is launching his campaign for city council next week. This was supposed to be the biggest moment of his life, the biggest moment for this family, and you are ruining it. I felt like the ground was crumbling beneath my feet. You care about his campaign? I am in jail, Mom. They are charging me with kidnapping. And whose fault is that? She shot back, crossing her arms. Brad is the best thing that ever happened to this family. He is successful. He is white. He has connections. He is going to lift us out of this neighborhood. Tisha did her part by marrying him. All you had to do was stay out of the way. But no, you could not stand seeing your sister happy, could you? You just had to drag her down to your level. She reached into her designer purse and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper, shoving it through the slot at the bottom of the barrier. It was the same plea deal the detective had shown me. "Sign it," she commanded. I looked from the paper to her face. "You want me to confess to something I did not do. I want you to take responsibility for your jealousy," she said, her voice dangerously low. "Brad is willing to be generous. If you sign this and admit you had a mental breakdown, he will make sure you get probation. He will even pay for your therapy. You sacrifice a little bit of your pride and the family survives. If you fight this, you drag Brad's name through the mud. You destroy his chances at the election. Is that what you want? To be the reason we lose everything?" Tears pricked my eyes, hot and angry. I am not the one destroying this family, Mom. Tisha is the one who abandoned her child. Brad is the one framing me, and you are helping them. I am your daughter, too. Why am I always the one who has to bleed so Tisha can shine? Because Tisha is building a future, my mother said coldly. You are just working night shifts and living alone. You have nothing to lose, Zora. Be useful for once in your life. Sign the paper. I took a deep breath. The sadness that had weighed on me for 32 years, the feeling of never being enough, suddenly evaporated. In its place was something harder, something unbreakable. I looked at the woman who gave birth to me and realized I was looking at a stranger. "No," I said firmly, pushing the paper back through the slot. "I will not sign. I am going to trial, and I am going to expose all of you." My mother's eyes narrowed into slits. She leaned in close to the mesh, her perfume smelling sickly sweet in the stale air. "You think you can win against us? You think anyone will believe you?" She paused, letting a cruel smile spread across her face. "Fine. Have it your way. But know this, Zora. When this goes to trial, I will be the first witness called by the prosecution. I will stand on that Bible and I will tell the judge exactly what they need to hear. I will tell them about your history of instability. I will tell them how you have been obsessed with Lily since she was born because you are barren. I will tell them you have been threatening Tisha for years." I stared at her in horror. "You would perjure yourself. You would lie to send your own daughter to prison." "I will do whatever it takes to protect the family that actually matters," she whispered. "So think carefully, Zora. Who is the jury going to believe? The grieving mother and the respected politician, or the jealous spinster aunt who has clearly lost her mind? The choice is yours." I sat on the hard bench for another hour, preparing myself for the long wait until my arraignment on Monday morning. I had already calculated the hours. I would spend at least 24 more hours in this hellhole, surrounded by the smell of bleach and despair. But then, the heavy steel door buzzed open, and the guard called my name again. "Brooks, you made bail. You are free to go." I blinked in confusion. I had not called anyone. My mother had refused to help me, and my assets were likely frozen or being watched. Who on earth had posted $50,000 in cash for a kidnapping suspect? I walked to the front desk where the sergeant handed me a plastic bag containing my shoelaces and my wallet. "Who paid this?" I asked, looking around the lobby expecting to see a friend or maybe a colleague from my firm. "Anonymous donor," the sergeant muttered without looking up. "Cash payment. Don't ask questions. Just get out of here." I walked out of the precinct into a wall of rain. The sky was a bruised purple, reflecting the storm raging inside me. I was shivering in my thin pajamas and flip-flops, my hair plastered to my skull. I hailed a cab using the emergency cash I always kept hidden in the lining of my wallet. My only thought was to get home, take a hot shower, and boot up my secure server. Once I accessed the cloud backups from Lily's watch, I would have everything I needed to destroy Brad. The cab ride was a blur of neon lights and rain-streaked windows. When we pulled up to my apartment building, I felt a flicker of relief. It was my sanctuary, my fortress. I ran up the stairs to the 3rd floor, my hand shaking as I slid my key into the lock. It did not turn. I frowned, thinking I was just cold and clumsy. I jiggled the key, trying to force it, but it hit a solid resistance. The lock had been changed. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through my exhaustion. Had I been evicted already? It had not even been 12 hours. I pounded on the door. "Open up!" I shouted. "I live here!" The door swung open instantly, but it was not my landlord standing there. It was Brad. He was leaning against the doorframe, looking fresh and clean in a navy suit that cost more than my car. Standing behind him was a man with a briefcase who looked like a shark in human skin. Brad smiled down at me, his eyes gleaming with malicious delight as he took in my wet, shivering form. "You cannot be here, Zora," he said calmly, blocking my entrance. "This is my apartment. Brad, get out of my way," I snapped, trying to push past him. The shark in the suit stepped forward, holding up a document stamped with the court seal. "Ms. Brooks, I am representing Mr. and Mrs. Miller. This is an emergency ex parte protective order granted by Judge Stevens an hour ago. Due to the severe nature of the kidnapping charges and your unstable mental state, you are ordered to stay 500 yards away from the minor child, Lily Miller, at all times." I stared at him, wiping rain from my eyes. "Lily is not here. She is at her house. I am at my house, actually." The lawyer interrupted, his voice smooth and condescending. "Your apartment building is located exactly 1 block from St. Mary's Elementary School, where Lily attends. Your presence here constitutes a violation of the protective order. The judge agreed that you residing so close to the victim presents an immediate danger. You are legally barred from entering this residence until the trial is over." I felt the air leave my lungs. "You have got to be kidding me. You are evicting me from my own home because it is near her school. It is Sunday. She is not even at school." Brad chuckled a low, dark sound that made my skin crawl. "The law is the law, Zora. We are just thinking of the children. You are homeless now. Maybe you can go sleep in the park with the other junkies. It suits you." He stepped back and slammed the door in my face. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the empty hallway. I heard the deadbolt slide home, followed by the chain lock. I stood there, staring at the wood water dripping from my nose, realizing the depth of their cruelty. They had not just framed me. They wanted to erase me. They wanted me on the street, broken and desperate, so I would have no choice but to crawl back and sign their plea deal. I turned around and walked back out into the rain. I did not cry. Crying was for victims, and I was done being a victim. I walked 2 blocks until I found a dry awning outside a closed bakery. I sat down on the cold concrete and pulled off my left sneaker. Brad thought he was smart. He thought he had taken my phone, my computer, and my home. He thought he had cut off my communication with the world. But he forgot who I really was. I reached under the padded insole of my shoe and pulled out a tiny Nokia phone, no bigger than a lighter. It was my emergency burner, fully charged and encrypted. I dialed the number I had memorized 10 years ago. It rang once. "It is Zora," I said into the darkness, my voice steady and cold as the rain falling around me. "Initiate Protocol 0. I want everything on Brad Miller. Every email, every text, every bank transfer. Burn him to the ground." I had nowhere left to go. My apartment was off limits, my bank accounts were likely being watched, and I was wearing shoes soaking wet from the rain. There was only one place I knew my father would be at 10 in the morning on a Sunday. Grace Community Chapel had been my family's church for 3 generations. It was the place where I was baptized, the place where I sang in the choir before my work schedule became too demanding. I told myself that if I could just make eye contact with my dad, if I could just get 5 minutes alone with him, he would listen. He was a quiet man, often overshadowed by my mother's ambition, but he had a conscience. He was the only one who might believe me. I pushed open the heavy oak doors, trying to make myself as small as possible. The sanctuary was packed. The air was thick with the smell of expensive perfume and old hymnals. The gospel choir was swaying on stage, their voices rising in a crescendo of praise. For a split second, the music washed over me, and I felt a flicker of peace. But then the music stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was unnatural. It started from the back rows, where people noticed my wet clothes and disheveled hair, and it rippled forward like a wave until the entire room was dead silent. Hundreds of eyes turned to look at me. I saw judgment in every single pair. I saw whispers behind gloved hands. Pastor Johnson stood at the pulpit. He was a man who wore custom suits and drove a Mercedes that Brad had helped him lease through a campaign donation loophole. I used to respect him, but as he looked down at me from the elevated stage, I saw no compassion in his eyes, only political calculation. He gripped the microphone, his voice booming through the speakers. "Brothers and sisters, we have a wolf in the fold today." The congregation gasped. He pointed a shaking finger directly at me. "Zora Brooks, you have violated the sanctity of the family unit. You have brought shame upon your mother and terrorized your sister's home. A kidnapper and a thief has no place in this house of worship." My face burned hot with humiliation. I wanted to scream that he was lying, that Brad had bought his loyalty, but my voice was stuck in my throat. I looked toward the front row, the seat of honor reserved for the biggest donors. There sat my family. Brad was shaking his head, looking solemn and dignified. Beside him, Tisha stood up slowly. She was wearing a modest white dress, looking like a fragile angel who had been through hell. She turned to face the crowd, and her voice trembled perfectly. "Please, Pastor, do not be too harsh on her. The devil works hard on weak souls. We must pray for her. She does not know what she is doing." She looked at me with tears in her eyes, tears that only I knew were fake. "I forgive you, Zora. I just want you to get help." A chorus of amens rang out. People were nodding, praising Tisha for her strength and grace. It was a masterclass in manipulation. She had turned the entire community into her personal army. I ignored them all. I locked eyes with my father, who was sitting next to my mother. He looked old and tired. His shoulders slumped. "Dad," I whispered, though I knew he could not hear me. "Please." For a moment, I saw a spark of the father I remembered. He looked at me, seeing his daughter standing alone and broken in the back of the church. He gripped the pew in front of him. He started to stand up. My heart leaped. He was going to say something. He was going to defend me. But then my mother's hand shot out like a viper. She grabbed his forearm, her nails digging into his suit jacket. She leaned in and whispered something into his ear, something short and sharp. I saw the color drain from my father's face. He looked at me one last time, his eyes filled with apology and shame. And then he sat back down. He looked at his lap, refusing to meet my gaze again. That was the moment the last piece of my heart broke. But as it shattered, it did not leave me empty. It cleared out the space where my need for their love used to be. I realized I had spent my entire life trying to prove I was worthy of people who would sell me out for a slightly better reputation. I looked at the pastor, who was now gesturing for the ushers to remove me. I looked at Tisha, basking in the adoration of the crowd. And finally, I looked at my father, the man who just chose silence over his daughter. I did not wait for the ushers. I straightened my spine. I wiped the rain from my face. The sadness evaporated, leaving behind a cold, hard clarity. I turned around and walked out of those double doors. I was done begging for a seat at their table. I was going to buy the building and evict them all. I took a taxi to the industrial district on the edge of town, where the buildings were covered in graffiti and the streetlights had been broken for years. The driver looked at me in the rearview mirror with concern as he pulled up to a crumbling brick warehouse that used to be a textile factory in the 50s. "Are you sure you want to be dropped off here, miss?" he asked, his hand hovering over the door lock. "It does not look safe." I handed him a crisp $100 bill from my emergency stash. "I will be fine, thank you. Keep the change." I stepped out onto the cracked pavement. To the outside world, and especially to my family, this building was just another rotting carcass of the city's manufacturing past. It was the perfect camouflage for a woman who needed to disappear. I walked to the side service entrance, which looked rusted shut. I glanced around to make sure the street was empty before placing my hand on a specific brick in the wall. A hidden biometric scanner read my palm print, and the heavy steel door clicked open silently. As I stepped inside, the smell of wet pavement and garbage vanished, replaced by the sterile hum of air conditioning and the soft whir of high-powered processors. I walked into the elevator and pressed the button for the sub-basement. The car descended smoothly, and when the doors opened, I stepped into my real life. Z-Shield Solutions. The room was a sprawling command center, walled with monitors and filled with the frantic clicking of keyboards. This was the company I had built from nothing. We provided high-level cybersecurity and private investigation for the city's elite. Corporate espionage divorce settlements for billionaires missing assets. We handled the dirty laundry of the 1%. And I was the one who held the bleach. My staff froze as I walked in. They were used to seeing me in tailored suits, commanding the room with effortless authority. Today I stood before them in rain-soaked church clothes, my hair a disaster, and my eyes red from lack of sleep. Marcus, my head of operations, stood up from his desk. "Boss, we saw the news. We thought you were in custody. We were about to trigger the legal contingency plan." I waved him off. walking straight to my glass-enclosed office. "The legal plan is too slow, Marcus. We are going off the books for this one. I need everything we have on Brad Miller. I want his financials, his phone records, his email drafts, and his geolocation history for the last 6 months. If he bought a stick of gum, I want to know what flavor it was." Marcus nodded, signaling the team. "You heard her. Deep dive on Miller. Let's go." I sat down in my leather chair, the first comfortable seat I had occupied in 24 hours. I took a deep breath, letting the familiar hum of the servers calm my racing heart. My family thought I was a failure because I did not have a husband or a visible career. They thought I worked security at night because I was uneducated. They never asked why I drove a 10-year-old sedan or why I lived in a modest apartment. They never realized that true power does not need to announce itself. True power is knowing everyone else's secrets while they know nothing about yours. I pulled my keyboard closer. Brad had taken my phone and my laptop, thinking he had cut me off from the world. He thought he was playing chess, but he did not realize he was playing against the person who designed the board. I typed in a secure command code. "Accessing asset LILY. A week ago, I had given my niece Lily a pink smartwatch for her birthday. Tisha had rolled her eyes, calling it a cheap toy from the dollar store. She did not know that the watch was a military-grade GPS tracker with a remote audio bug that bypassed standard interference. I had given it to Lily because I never trusted Brad. I had seen the way he looked at her when he was angry, the way his patience snapped too quickly. I wanted to be able to find her if I ever needed to. I never thought I would need it to save myself. The screen flickered to life, showing a map of the city. A pulsing green dot appeared. It was located at my mother's house. Tisha had taken Lily there to hide from the press. I put on my headset and typed the command to activate the microphone. My hands were trembling slightly. This was it. This was the moment that would turn the tide. I initiated the audio stream. Static hissed in my ears for a second, followed by the clear sound of a television playing cartoons in the background. Then I heard voices. "The connection is stable," Marcus said from the doorway. "We have live audio." I held up a hand, silencing him. I heard Tisha's voice. She sounded annoyed, not grieving. "Mom, stop pacing! You are making me dizzy!" Brad said, "It is handled. Zora is on the street, and by tomorrow she will be begging to sign that plea deal." Then I heard my mother's voice, closer to the microphone. "I just worry, Tisha. What if she talks? What if she figures out about the hotel?" I leaned forward, my eyes locked on the screen. The recording light was blinking a steady, rhythmic red. "Got you," I whispered. I pressed play on the audio file labeled Saturday, 9 p.m. My heart was pounding against my ribs, expecting to hear the sounds of domestic violence I had rushed to stop. I expected to hear Brad shouting or Tisha crying in pain. I sat forward in my chair, pressing the headphones tight against my ears, preparing myself to relive the trauma of that night. The audio began with the sound of my own voice, breathless and panicked as I burst through their front door. I heard Tisha sobbing, begging me to take Lily. I heard the rustle of fabric as I wrapped my niece in a blanket. I heard myself promising Tisha that I would keep Lily safe. Then I heard the front door close as I left with the child. I waited for the violence to start. I waited for Brad to storm into the room and attack my sister. But instead, silence filled the recording. Then Tisha stopped crying. Instantly. The sobbing cut off like a faucet being turned off. I heard the distinctive sound of her heels clicking across the hardwood floor. There was no fear in her footsteps. There was only haste. I heard her dial a number on her phone. The line connected. "He is gone," she said, her voice smooth and completely devoid of the terror she had just performed for me. "Zora just took the brat. The house is empty. Come over." I froze. Who was she talking to? Brad was supposed to be the one hurting her. 20 minutes of silence passed on the recording before the doorbell rang. I heard the door open and a deep male voice spoke. But it was not Brad. I recognized that voice immediately. It was Julian Smith, the senior managing partner at Brad's marketing firm. He was the man who held the keys to Brad's promotion and political funding. "You look stunning, Tisha," Julian said. "Brad is a lucky man." "He is a busy man," Tisha purred. The sound of wine being poured echoed through my headphones. "He is so stressed about this contract, Julian. He really needs this win. If he gets the partnership, he can finally afford the campaign. I would be so grateful if you could help him." I felt bile rise in my throat. Tisha had not called me because she was in danger. She had called me to remove the only witness from the house so she could sleep with her husband's boss to secure a promotion. She had used my love for Lily and my fear for her safety as a cleaning service to tidy up her life for an affair. I fast-forwarded the audio. Hours of sickening conversation passed. Then silence again. The timestamp on the screen read 5:45 in the morning. The sound of the front door opening shattered the quiet, but this time, the footsteps were heavy and angry. "Tisha, where the hell are you?" It was Brad. He was home early. I heard Tisha gasp. The audio picked up the sound of her scrambling, perhaps trying to fix her clothes. "Brad, what are you doing here? You were supposed to be on the golf trip until noon." "The trip got canceled," Brad snapped. "Why is the house quiet? Where is Lily?" There was a long pause. I could practically hear Tisha's mind racing. She had been caught. She had sent her daughter away and spent the night with another man. If she told the truth, her marriage and her social status were over. She needed a lie, and she needed it fast. She started to cry again, the same fake hysterical sob she had used on me. "It was Zora. She broke in, Brad. She took her." "What?" Brad shouted. "I was out all night looking for them," Tisha lied, her voice rising in pitch. "I came home and Lily was gone. Zora sent me a text saying she was taking her because we are unfit parents. I was too scared to call the police because she threatened to hurt Lily if I did." I sat in my office, gripping the edge of my desk so hard my knuckles turned white. It was a lie, born of pure desperation, a split-second decision to save her own skin. Brad went silent. I expected him to ask for proof. I expected him to check the security cameras that I knew they had. But then his voice changed. It went from angry to cold and calculating. "She took her without permission," he said slowly, testing the words. "Yes," Tisha sobbed. "She kidnapped our daughter." Brad let out a low, dark laugh. "This is it, Tisha. Do you realize what this means? If we call the police right now, if we say she took Lily against your will, that is a felony." "But she is my sister," Tisha whimpered, though the protest sounded weak. "She is the only thing standing between us and your grandmother's inheritance," Brad hissed. "That house she is living in is worth $500,000. If Zora is a convicted felon, she cannot inherit. The estate goes to the next of kin. That is you. That is us. That is the campaign money right there." I stopped the recording. The silence in my office was deafening. I stared at the waveform on the screen, the visual representation of my family plotting my destruction. They were not just cruel. They were monsters. Tisha was willing to send me to prison to cover up her adultery. Brad was willing to destroy my life, to steal a house, to fund his political vanity. I looked up at Marcus, who was standing in the doorway, his face pale. He had heard everything. "Boss," he said quietly, "what do you want to do?" I slowly took off my headphones. My hands were steady now. The grief was gone. The shock was gone. All that was left was the cold precision of a woman who had just been handed the nuclear launch codes. "Save a copy to the secure server," I said, my voice ice cold. "And then send a distress signal to my contact at the FBI. Brad wants to play the victim. I am going to make sure he plays the villain in the biggest scandal this city has ever seen. But first, I need to make sure Tisha knows that I know." I picked up my burner phone and typed a single message to my sister. I hope the contract was worth it. I hit send and watched the delivery receipt turn into a red receipt instantly. The game had just changed, and it was my turn to roll the dice. My personal bank account hit zero at 9 in the morning on Monday. I was sitting in the command center of Z-Shield Solutions when Marcus walked in with a grim expression on his face. He held up a tablet showing my personal Chase checking account, which I used for my cover identity as a security guard. It was frozen. The balance was showing negative numbers due to a sudden lien placed by a law firm I recognized immediately. It was the firm representing Brad's political campaign. "They're moving fast," Marcus said, tapping the screen. "They got an emergency injunction to freeze your assets, claiming you might use the funds to flee the jurisdiction with the child. They left you with nothing, Zora, not even enough to buy a cup of coffee." I leaned back in my chair and laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. Brad thought he had just checkmated me. He thought that by cutting off my access to my meager wages, he would starve me into submission. He had no idea that this account held less than 1% of my actual wealth. My real money was sitting securely in diversified offshore accounts and blind trusts that Brad could not touch in 1,000 years. But he did not need to know that. In fact, I needed him to believe his plan was working perfectly. "This is exactly what I was waiting for," I told Marcus, standing up. "He thinks I am desperate. He thinks I am broke and terrified. So I am going to give him exactly what he wants." I went to the wardrobe in my office where I kept my disguise. I pulled on a faded gray hoodie and a pair of worn-out jeans. I rubbed off my makeup until I looked pale and exhausted. Then I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out 2 specific items. The first was a small black button that I snapped onto the collar of my shirt. It was a high-definition 4K camera with a microphone that could pick up a whisper from across the room. The second was a cheap-looking ballpoint pen. "Are you sure about this?" Boss Marcus asked, eyeing the pen. "That is a risky play." I tucked the pen into my pocket. "It is only risky if you do not know the science. The ink in this pen is thermally unstable. It looks like permanent black ink when it hits the paper, but give it 4 hours of exposure to room temperature air, and it vanishes without a trace. I am going to sign my life away, Marcus, and by the time Brad tries to file the paperwork, the page will be blank." I took a cab to Brad's campaign headquarters. It was a sleek glass building downtown plastered with posters of his smiling face and the slogan, "Family values you can trust." The irony was so thick I could taste it. I walked past the receptionist, who wrinkled her nose at my appearance. I did not wait to be announced. I pushed open the double doors to his corner office and stumbled inside, letting my shoulders slump in defeat. Brad was sitting behind a massive mahogany desk, polishing his glasses. When he saw me, a slow, satisfied smile spread across his face. He did not look surprised. He looked like a hunter watching a rabbit walk into a trap. "Well, well," he said, putting his glasses back on. "Look who finally decided to crawl out of the gutter. I heard your bank account had a little accident this morning. Tough break, Zora. It is hard to hire a defense attorney when you cannot even afford a bus ticket." I stood in the middle of the room, wringing my hands together, playing the part of the broken sister. "Please, Brad," I said, my voice trembling. "I have nothing. You took my home. You took my money. I cannot go to prison. I will do anything. Just please drop the charges." Brad laughed, leaning back in his expensive leather chair. "I told you, Zora. I warned you not to cross me. But you just had to be the hero, didn't you? You just had to interfere in my marriage." I stepped closer, the camera on my collar capturing every pixel of his arrogant face. "I am sorry," I whispered. "I just want this to be over." Brad opened his desk drawer and pulled out a thick document. He slapped it onto the desk. "This is a quitclaim deed transferring the full ownership of your grandmother's house to Tisha and me. You sign this, and you waive all your rights to the property. In exchange, I will call the district attorney right now and tell him it was all a misunderstanding. I will say Tisha was off her meds and got confused. The charges go away, you go free, but the house is mine." I looked at the paper. That house was the only legacy my grandmother left. It was where I grew up. Handing it over to him felt like a physical blow, even though I knew the signature would fade. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my special pen. My hand shook, fake nerves masking my genuine rage. "You promise?" I asked, looking him in the eye. "You promise I won't go to jail?" "Sign it," Brad commanded, pointing to the line. I bent down and scribbled my name, Zora Brooks, in bold, dark letters. I watched the ink settle into the paper. It looked so real. I pushed the document back to him. Brad picked it up, inspecting the signature. He blew on the ink to dry it. "Perfect," he said. He placed the deed in his outbox. "You made the right choice, Zora. You are never going to win against me." I turned to leave, my head bowed. As I reached the door, Brad's voice stopped me. "Hey, Zora." I turned around. He was grinning, a cruel, ugly look that distorted his handsome features. "Do not ever think you are on my level. You people always think you can rise above your station, but you are just like the rest of them, stupid black trash who should learn to stay in their place." The slur hung in the air, heavy and poisonous. He said it with such ease, such comfort, that I knew it was not the first time he had thought it. It was what he truly believed. I felt a cold thrill run down my spine. He had just given me the final nail for his coffin. I did not respond. I just opened the door and walked out. I kept my head down until I was safely in the elevator. As the doors closed, hiding me from his view, I lifted my head and tapped the button on my collar twice, stopping the recording. I pulled out my burner phone and texted Marcus. "We got him. Prepare the broadcast. By the time that ink disappears, Brad Miller's career is going to be nothing but smoke." Back at the command center, I watched the live feed from the GPS tracker on Lily's wrist, but that only told me where she was, not how she was doing. The dot had not moved from her bedroom in 14 hours. It was Tuesday morning, which meant Lily should have been at St. Mary's Elementary School, sitting in her first grade class. Instead, she was locked in her room, a prisoner in her own home, because her mother was terrified she might say the wrong thing to a teacher. Tisha was unraveling. I could see it in the way she moved through the house on the few security cameras I had managed to access in the hallways. She was pacing, constantly drinking wine from a coffee mug at 10 in the morning and ignoring the crying child upstairs. She was not protecting Lily. She was silencing a witness. I needed eyes inside that room. I needed to know my niece was safe, and I needed to give her a mission. I pulled up the network schematic for Brad's house. They had installed a high-end baby monitor system when Lily was born and never updated the firmware. It was a rookie mistake. In my line of work, an outdated firmware patch is as good as an open door. I typed in a backdoor script, and within seconds, a grainy video feed popped up on my main monitor. My heart broke instantly. Lily was sitting on the floor, surrounded by expensive toys she did not want to play with. She was wearing the same clothes from yesterday. Her hair, usually neatly braided, was messy. She was hugging her knees, rocking back and forth, staring at the door. I adjusted my microphone. I had to be careful. If I spoke too loudly, I would alert Tisha downstairs. I activated the two-way audio feature on the camera. "Lily," I whispered. On the screen, Lily's head snapped up. She looked around the room, her eyes wide with fear. "Who is there?" she whimpered, pulling her knees tighter to her chest. "It is Auntie Zora, baby," I said, keeping my voice soft and soothing. "Do not be scared. I am talking to you through the camera on your dresser. Look at the camera." Lily scrambled up and ran to the dresser. She grabbed the plastic device with both hands, peering into the lens. "Auntie Zora," she whispered, tears instantly spilling down her cheeks. "Mommy locked the door. She said you are a bad person. She said you want to hurt us. She said I cannot go to school because you might try to steal me again." I felt a surge of pure, white-hot rage. Tisha was not just lying to the police. She was poisoning her own daughter's mind, turning her into a victim of a war she did not understand. "Mommy is sick right now, Lily," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "She is confused. I love you more than anything in the world. I would never hurt you. You know that, don't you?" Lily nodded, wiping her nose on her sleeve. "I know. I told Mommy that Daddy was not hitting her that night. I told her she went out and left me alone, but she got really mad." She squeezed my arm hard. "She said if I tell anyone that again, Daddy will go to jail and it will be all my fault." I closed my eyes for a second. That was the leverage. They were using a 6-year-old's love for her father to blackmail her into silence. "Listen to me, Lily," I said, opening my eyes and leaning closer to the screen. "You are a brave girl. You are the bravest girl I know. I am going to fix this. I promise you. I am going to come get you, and we are going to go get ice cream, and everything will be okay. But I need you to be a secret agent for me right now. Can you do that?" Lily sniffled and nodded, standing a little taller. "Like in the movies." "Yes, exactly like in the movies," I said. "Do you remember the drawing you made yesterday? The one you tried to show me before the police came? The one with the clock?" I had seen a glimpse of it on Sunday morning. Lily had drawn a picture of the clock on the wall, showing the time Tisha left, and a picture of herself alone in the dark house. It was simple, childish evidence, but in family court, it would be a bombshell. It proved she was aware of the timeline. "Yes," Lily whispered. "I hid it under my rug. Mommy tore up my other drawings." "Good girl," I said. "Now listen carefully. I need you to take that drawing, and I need you to find your favorite book. The blue one, about the hungry caterpillar. Put the drawing inside the book carefully so it does not wrinkle. Then put the book on your bookshelf right in the middle where it looks normal. Do not touch it again until I tell you. Can you do that?" I can do it, Lily said, her voice gaining a little strength. Suddenly, the audio sensors on the camera picked up a sound. Heavy footsteps were thumping up the stairs. They were fast and erratic. Tisha was coming. Someone is coming, Lily, I said quickly. Hide the drawing now. Act normal. Do not look at the camera. Lily dropped the monitor and scrambled to the rug. She pulled out the crumpled piece of paper and shoved it frantically into the blue book on her nightstand. She shoved the book onto the shelf just as the doorknob twisted. Lily threw herself onto her bed and grabbed a teddy bear, pretending to play. The bedroom door flew open. Tisha stood there looking disheveled and manic. Her eyes scanned the room wildly. She had heard something. The walls in that house were thin, and she was already on edge. "Who are you talking to?" Tisha demanded, stalking into the room. "I heard voices." Lily shrank back against the headboard, hugging the bear. "Nobody, Mommy. I was playing with Mr. Bear." "Don't lie to me!" Tisha screamed, stepping closer. I heard a woman's voice. "Do you have a phone? Did she give you a phone?" She began tearing the room apart. She ripped the sheets off the bed, threw the pillows across the room, and dumped the toy chest onto the floor. Lily began to cry silently, trembling in the corner. Tisha turned, spinning around in a circle. Her eyes landed on the dresser. The baby monitor, which Lily had shifted slightly, was facing the bed. The small red LED light, indicating an active connection, was blinking steadily. Tisha's face went pale, then red with fury. She marched over to the dresser and stared directly into the lens. I could see the madness in her eyes, the desperation of a woman who knew the walls were closing in. "I know you are watching, Zora," she hissed, spitting the words at the camera. "You think you are so smart. You think you can spy on me in my own house? You are never going to see her again. Do you hear me? Never." She grabbed the monitor with both hands. "Mommy, no!" Lily screamed. Tisha raised the device high above her head and smashed it down onto the hardwood floor with all her strength. The video feed fractured into digital noise. A high-pitched squeal pierced my headphones, and then the screen went black. Connection lost. I sat in the silence of my office, my heart hammering against my ribs. I pulled off the headset and threw it onto the desk. Tisha had destroyed the camera, but she was too late. I had seen what I needed to see, and more importantly, Lily had the evidence ready. I turned to Marcus. "Get the team ready," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "We are not waiting for the ink to fade on that deed. We are accelerating the timeline. If she wants to play the crazy mother, let's show the world exactly how crazy she really is. Initiate the leak to the press, now." I needed more than just family drama to take Brad down. I needed a felony. And to get that, I had to reach out to the only person Brad had treated worse than me. Kevin was a 24-year-old paralegal who had been Brad's executive assistant until 2 months ago. Brad had fired him publicly, claiming Kevin was incompetent, but my background check revealed the truth. Kevin was young, gay, and black, and that trifecta was offensive to Brad's conservative image. Brad had fired him for refusing to cover up illegal campaign donations. I arranged to meet Kevin at a Greasy Spoon diner near the airport, a place where men like Brad Miller would never be caught dead. I sat in the back booth, wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses, nursing a black coffee. When Kevin walked in, he looked terrified. He kept checking his phone and looking over his shoulder, as if he expected a sniper to be positioned on the roof. He slid into the booth opposite me, his hands shaking so badly he nearly knocked over the salt shaker. "I cannot believe I am doing this," he whispered. If Brad finds out I am talking to you, he will ruin me. He already blacklisted me from every law firm in the city. I am working at a car wash, Zora. I have a law degree, and I am scrubbing tires because your brother-in-law decided I was a liability. I pushed a manila envelope across the table. Inside was $5,000 in cash. Consider this a consultation fee, Kevin. I am not asking you to testify yet. I just need to know where the money is coming from. Brad's campaign raised $2 million in 3 months. That kind of money does not just appear. Kevin stared at the envelope, but he did not touch it. He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a hush. It is not about where the money is coming from, Zora. It is about where it is going. Brad has a problem. A big problem. He likes to gamble. Not just poker nights with the boys. I am talking about high-stakes underground games in illegal casinos. My eyes widened. Gambling debts. It was the oldest story in the book. Kevin continued, the words spilling out of him now that the dam had broken. He is in the hole for over $500,000 to some very dangerous people. That is why he is so desperate for the campaign funds. He is not spending it on ads or flyers. He is funneling the donations through shell companies to pay off loan sharks. I found the ledger, Zora. That is why he fired me. He caught me looking at the spreadsheet. He told me that if I ever breathed a word of it, he would frame me for embezzlement. I felt a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. Embezzling campaign funds was a federal crime. It was fraud. It was prison time. Do you have proof? I asked. Kevin reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small silver flash drive. He placed it on the table, covering it with his hand. I made a copy of the ledger before he escorted me out of the building. It has everything. The dates, the amounts, the fake vendor names. It proves he is stealing from his own donors. I took the drive and slipped it into my pocket. It felt heavy, like a loaded gun. Thank you, Kevin, I said. You just saved my life. And once I am done with him, you will get your career back. I promise. Kevin stood up, pulling his coat collar tight around his neck. Be careful, Zora. These are not just politicians. The people he owes money to, they break legs for fun. If Brad feels cornered, he will not just sue you. He will hurt you. I watched him leave and waited 10 minutes before I exited the diner. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and reflecting the neon signs. I felt invincible. I had the recording of Tisha admitting to the affair, and now I had proof of Brad's financial crimes. I had them on both fronts. I walked toward the subway station, my mind racing with the next steps. I needed to get this drive to my forensic accountant to verify the data trail. I stepped off the curb to cross the empty street, checking for traffic out of habit. The road was clear, but then I heard it. The sound of an engine roaring to life, not from down the street, but from the alleyway directly behind me. It was a guttural, mechanical scream of a car, accelerating at maximum velocity. I turned my head. A black sedan with tinted windows and no license plates was barreling toward me. It was not swerving. It was aiming. Time seemed to slow down. I saw the grille of the car, the bright headlights blinding me. Most people would have frozen. Most people would have screamed. But I was not most people. My years of training in Krav Maga and defensive tactics kicked in before my brain could even process the fear. I did not try to outrun the car. I threw myself sideways, diving toward the gap between 2 parked delivery trucks. The black sedan smashed into the side of the truck, inches from where my legs had been a split second ago. The sound of metal crunching against metal was deafening. Sparks showered down onto the wet pavement. I rolled on the asphalt, ignoring the pain of the gravel tearing into my palms and knees. I scrambled up, pressing my back against the cold metal of the truck. The black sedan reversed instantly, tires screeching and smoking. The driver gunned the engine again, preparing for a second attempt. He was going to try to crush me between the trucks. I looked around, frantically. I was trapped in the narrow space, but directly above me was the open cargo door of the delivery truck. I jumped, grabbing the rusty handle, and hauled myself up just as the black sedan slammed into the space where I had been standing. The impact shook the entire truck, knocking me off balance, but I was inside. I looked out just in time to see the sedan peel away, speeding down the street and disappearing into the night. I lay on the floor of the delivery truck, gasping for air, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it was going to bruise my ribs. My hands were bleeding, my jeans were torn, but I was alive. I reached into my pocket. The flash drive was still there, safe. I sat up, wiping a smear of blood from my cheek. Kevin was right. This was not a legal battle anymore. Brad knew I was getting close. He was done playing games. He had just tried to kill me. I pulled out my burner phone. My hand was shaking, but my voice was steady when I recorded the voice note for Marcus. "We are going to war, Marcus, and I am done fighting fair. Send the team to my location and bring the heavy artillery. They just made the biggest mistake of their lives. They missed." Wednesday night was supposed to be Brad Miller's coronation. The Liberty Gala was the most exclusive political event of the season, held in the Crystal Ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton. Every power player in Atlanta was there, sipping champagne and writing checks to fund Brad's campaign for city council. He stood at the center of the room in a tuxedo that cost more than my father's car, holding court like a king. Tisha was by his side, looking the part of the devoted wife in a modest pink gown, smiling until her cheeks hurt. They looked perfect. They looked untouchable. They looked like they had successfully erased the stain of their sister-in-law from their lives. I watched them from the back of the room for a moment, savoring the scene. They thought I was cowering in a motel room somewhere, terrified of the police and broken by their legal threats. They thought I was gone. They had no idea that I had not only survived their assassination attempt in the alleyway, but I had used it to fuel a transformation that would leave them breathless. I stepped out of the shadows, and the room went quiet. It started as a ripple near the entrance and spread like wildfire until the clinking of glasses stopped completely. I was not wearing my security guard uniform. I was not wearing the frumpy clothes my mother always criticized. I was wearing a floor-length custom silk gown in deep emerald green, the color of money and envy. It was cut to perfection, showcasing a confidence that Zora, the doormat, never possessed. My hair was styled in intricate braids adorned with gold cuffs, and my makeup was sharp enough to cut glass. But it was not just my appearance that silenced the room. It was the man whose arm I was holding. Walking beside me was Councilman Robert Vance. He was the incumbent Brad was trying to unseat. He was a man of integrity, a man Brad had spent months slandering in the press as weak and ineffective. Vance smiled at the crowd, radiating genuine warmth, and then he patted my hand affectionately. I saw the color drain from Brad's face from across the room. He looked like he had seen a ghost. Tisha dropped her clutch. It hit the marble floor with a loud crack that echoed in the silence. We moved through the crowd, parting the sea of donors like royalty. I held my head high, meeting every stare with a cool, detached smile. I saw my mother in the crowd, her mouth hanging open, her eyes darting between me and the councilman in confusion. She took a step toward me, perhaps to scold me, but I looked right through her as if she were made of glass. Brad recovered first. His shock turned to a dangerous shade of red. He excused himself from a group of bankers and marched toward us, his jaw clenched tight. He stopped right in front of us, blocking our path to the bar. "What the hell are you doing here?" he hissed, keeping his voice low so the reporters nearby would not hear. "You are violating the protective order, Zora. I will have you arrested right here in front of everyone." Councilman Vance stepped forward, shielding me slightly. "Good evening, Mr. Miller. I believe you are mistaken. Ms. Brooks is here as my guest of honor. And regarding the protective order, my legal team reviewed it this morning. It states she cannot be within 500 yards of your daughter. I do not see Lily here tonight. This is a public event, and Zora is a private citizen exercising her right to support the candidate of her choice." Brad ignored him, glaring directly at me. "You have some nerve showing your face here after what you did. Get out, now, or I will have security drag you out." I laughed softly. It was a light, airy sound that made Brad flinch. "You really do not get it, do you, Brad? You think you are the one in control because you have a microphone and a stolen house. But you are playing checkers, and I have been playing chess since the day you met my sister." I took a step closer to him, invading his personal space. I smelled the expensive scotch on his breath and the underlying scent of fear sweat. I leaned up on my tiptoes, bringing my lips close to his ear so only he could hear the words that would end his world. "I know why the house was empty on Saturday night, Brad. I know Tisha was not crying in her room. I know she was at the Hilton Hotel downtown, room 304. I felt Brad stiffen, his entire body turning into stone. I pulled back slightly, just enough to look him in the eye. I continued, my voice a velvet whisper. "And I know she was not alone. She was with your boss, Julian. I have the video from the hallway security camera, Brad. It is very high definition. Would you like to see it? Or should I just airplay it to the big screen behind you right now?" Brad's face turned a sickly shade of gray. His eyes darted to the massive projector screen behind him, where his campaign slogan was looping, and then back to me. His arrogance evaporated, instantly replaced by the terrified look of a man who realized he was standing on a trap door. I smiled, patting his lapel gently. "Enjoy your party, Brad. It is going to be your last one." I did not stay at the gala to watch the fallout, because I had a more important appointment with my surveillance equipment. I sat in the back of my mobile command van parked 3 streets away from the Miller residence. The screen in front of me displayed a waveform audio visualizer connected directly to Tisha's smartphone. Yesterday morning, during a chaotic moment in the courthouse hallway, when Tisha was busy performing her fake tears for the cameras, I had brushed past her. In that split second of contact, I had slipped a cloned SIM card reader against her pocket, initiating a remote malware installation. Now her phone was my microphone, and it was broadcasting every sound in that house with crystal clear quality. I heard the heavy oak door of their colonial mansion slam shut with enough force to rattle the windows. Heavy footsteps stomped across the marble foyer. It was Brad. He had driven home from the gala in record time, likely breaking every traffic law in the city. The silence in the house was heavy, like the air before a tornado touches down. "Tisha, where are you?" Brad roared, his voice cracking with a mixture of rage and terror. I heard the click of heels on the stairs. Tisha sounded confused and defensive. "Brad, what are you doing home so early? Why did you leave the gala? Did something happen with the donors? The sound of a hand slamming against a wall echoed through my speakers. Don't play dumb with me, Tisha. Zora was there. She was at the party. And she knows everything. She knows about the Hilton. She knows about room 304. She knows about Julian. The silence that followed was deafening. I could practically hear Tisha's heart stopping. The air in the room seemed to get sucked out. When she finally spoke, her voice was a trembling whisper. She is lying, Brad. Zora is a liar. You know she is crazy. Stop it! Brad screamed. He was losing control completely. She has a video, Tisha. She has a security tape of you and my boss walking into a hotel room on the same night you claimed she kidnapped Lily.
Do you have any idea what this means?
Julian Smith holds the purse strings for my entire campaign. If he is sleeping with you, that means he owns me. It means I am a joke. I listened intently, adjusting the volume. This was the moment the rats started turning on each other. Tisha's defense mechanism kicked in. Instead of apologizing, she went on the attack. So what if I did it, huh? So what if I was with Julian? At least he pays attention to me, Brad. For the last 6 months, I have been nothing but a prop for your campaign. Smile, Tisha. Wave, Tisha. Look pretty, Tisha. You come home and you go straight to your office. You barely look at me unless there is a camera around. Julian actually listens to me. He makes me feel like I matter. You selfish witch, Brad shouted. I did this for us. I did this to get us out of debt. I am drowning in loans to pay for this house, for your clothes, for that car you drive. And you repay me by sleeping with the one man who can destroy my career. Tisha laughed, a cruel, high-pitched sound. Your career. It is always about you, isn't it? You are just mad because Zora outsmarted you. You told me she was stupid. You told me she was just a security guard. But she played you, Brad. She played us both. That was the wrong thing to say. I heard a sudden rush of movement followed by a sickening thud. It was the sound of flesh striking flesh, followed immediately by the noise of a body hitting the floor. Tisha screamed, but this time it was not a performance. It was a raw, guttural sound of pain and shock. Brad, what are you doing? Get away from me! I heard Brad breathing heavily, his breath ragged and animalistic. You ruined my life, he hissed. I am going to lose the election. I am going to prison for fraud, and it is all your fault. If you had just kept your legs closed, we would have won. Another thud. Then the sound of glass shattering. Tisha was crying, begging him to stop, but the rage had taken over. This was the true face of Brad Miller, the face he hid behind expensive suits and campaign slogans. I reached for the phone on my console, my finger hovering over the emergency line. I hated my sister for what she had done to me, but I needed her alive to testify. However, before I could dial, the noise stopped. Brad spoke again, his voice dangerously calm. Get up. Go wash your face. We are not done. If Zora releases that video, we are going to say it is a deep fake. We are going to say she used AI to create it. You are going to stand by my side and deny everything. Do you understand me? I heard Tisha whimpering, soft and broken. Yes, Brad. I understand. I leaned back in my chair, a cold shiver running down my spine. I had expected them to argue. I had expected them to panic. But I had not expected Brad to snap so violently. I looked at the recording indicator on my screen. It was still pulsing red. Every scream, every blow, every threat had been captured and stored on my secure cloud server. Brad thought he could bully his wife into silence. He thought he could spin a narrative about deep fakes. But he did not know that his domestic assault had just been broadcast to the one person who would ensure he never hurt anyone ever again. I continued to listen to the nightmare unfolding inside the Miller residence through my headphones. The sickening sounds of the physical altercation had faded, leaving only the heavy, jagged breathing of a man on the edge of sanity and the soft whimpering of a woman who had finally been broken. I was about to signal Marcus to send the police, but then I heard a new voice enter the audio stream. It was a voice I knew better than my own, but tonight it sounded older and more fragile than I had ever heard it. It was my mother, Linda. "Oh my God, Tisha. Brad, what have you done?" My mother had obviously been staying in the guest suite, likely to help with the campaign celebration or perhaps to keep an eye on Lily. She must have heard the screaming. I listened intently, waiting to hear her fury. I waited for her to slap Brad. I waited for her to defend her golden child with the same ferocity she had used to condemn me. But instead, I heard fear. "Mom, help me," Tisha sobbed. "He is crazy. He knows about Julian." Linda's voice trembled. "Brad, stop. Look at her face. You are going to leave a bruise. The press will see it. We cannot have a scandal right now." Even in the face of domestic violence, my mother was worried about public relations. She was worried about the campaign. It was pathetic. "Get out of my face, Linda," Brad snarled. "This is your fault, too. You raised a whore. You told me she was perfect. You told me this family had class, but you are just trash wrapped in expensive clothes." I heard footsteps retreating and the sound of a door slamming upstairs. Brad had walked away, likely to get a drink or to find something to clean up the mess. Downstairs, the silence stretched out. Then I saw my own burner phone light up on the dashboard of the van. The screen flashed a single word: Mom. I stared at it. For 3 days, I had been the villain. I had been the outcast. Now the woman who had looked me in the eye through a prison grate and told me to sign a false confession was calling me. She was calling the daughter she threw away to save the daughter she idolized. I let it ring 3 times, 4 times. Marcus looked at me questioningly. "Answer it," I said quietly, "but keep the recording running." I swiped the green button and put the phone to my ear. I did not say hello. I just listened. "Zora, thank God. Zora, please pick up." "I'm here, Linda," I said, my voice devoid of any warmth. "Zora, you have to come over here," my mother whispered, her voice shaking so hard it was barely audible. "Brad lost his mind. He hit Tisha. He is talking crazy, Zora. He is talking about burning the house down to get the insurance money if he loses the election. You have to come help us. You are security, right? You know how to handle men like this. Please, Zora, we need you." I closed my eyes, leaning my head back against the seat. There it was, the plea I had wanted to hear for years. The acknowledgement that I was needed, that I was capable. But it was too late. The bridge wasn't just burned, it was incinerated. "You need me?" I repeated slowly. "That is funny, because 3 days ago you told me I was nothing. You told me I was jealous and unstable. You were willing to let me rot in a cell for 20 years, Linda.
You were going to perjure yourself in court to protect Brad. I know, and I am sorry, Linda cried. I was wrong. But he is dangerous, Zora. He is going to kill us. He locked all the doors. I cannot get Lily out. You have to help your family. I opened my eyes and looked at the monitor where the audio waveform was spiking. I tried to help this family, I said, my voice hardening into steel. I tried to save Lily on Saturday night, and you spat in my face. You chose your side, Linda. You picked the successful white son-in-law over your own flesh and blood. You wanted the prestige. You wanted the proximity to power. Well, now you have it. You are right there in the middle of it. Zora, please, she begged, sobbing openly now. He is coming back downstairs. I am not coming, Linda, I said. I am not your savior anymore. I am just the security guard, remember? You made your bed. Now you are going to lie in it until the police arrive. And trust me, they are coming. But they are coming on my terms, not yours. I was about to hang up when I heard the distinct click of a landline extension being picked up inside the house. Who are you talking to? It was Brad. He had picked up the kitchen phone and was listening in on the line. My mother gasped, dropping the cell phone. It clattered to the floor, but the line remained open. I heard her scrambling backward. Brad, no! I was calling the doctor. Tisha needs a doctor. You were calling, Zora, Brad roared. I heard you. You called that bitch. You are conspiring with her now, aren't you? You are all against me. No, Brad, please, Linda screamed. I heard a struggle. Furniture was being overturned. I heard my mother pleading for mercy, a sound that twisted my stomach despite my anger. I gave you everything, Brad shouted. I paid off your credit cards, Linda. I put you in this big house, and this is how you repay me? By calling my enemy? Fine. If you want to be together, you can be together. I heard the sound of dragging. My mother was screaming for Tisha, but Tisha was too broken to help. I heard a heavy door being wrenched open. It sounded like the thick, reinforced door to the basement storage unit, the one they used as a wine cellar. Get in there, Brad commanded. Brad, please, it is dark. I have claustrophobia. Do not do this. Shut up. You stay down here until I figure out how to spin this. If I hear one word if you try to call anyone else, I will turn off the ventilation. Do you understand me? No, Brad, don't. The heavy door slammed shut with a final, terrifying thud. The sound of a deadbolt sliding into place echoed through the phone lying on the floor. Then silence. I stared at the phone in my hand. He had done it. He had crossed the line from domestic abuser to kidnapper. He had locked his wife and his mother-in-law in a soundproof basement. I looked at Marcus. My face was wet with tears I did not realize I had shed, but my hands were steady. They are trapped, I said. He has gone completely rogue. Marcus reached for the radio. Do we move in, boss? Not yet, I said, wiping my face. If we go in now, it is a hostage situation. He might hurt them before we can breach the door. We need to distract him. We need to break him completely so he surrenders without a fight. I looked at the time. It was almost morning. Upload the files, I commanded. Release the video of Tisha at the hotel. Release the audio of Brad admitting to the fraud. And release the recording of him hitting Tisha.
Send it to every news station, every blog, and every social media platform in Atlanta. I grabbed my tactical vest and pulled it on over my silk dress. By the time the sun comes up, Brad Miller won't be worried about his hostages. He is going to be the most hated man in America. And then I am going to walk through that front door and take what is mine. Thursday morning broke with a sky the color of bruised iron, but the street outside the Fulton County Courthouse was lit up brighter than a stadium. My decision to leak the digital evidence overnight had turned a standard custody hearing into the biggest media circus Atlanta had seen in a decade. News vans blocked the traffic for 3 blocks, and reporters were practically climbing over the barricades. When the black SUV carrying Brad and Tisha pulled up, the crowd surged forward. I watched from the window of the arrival holding room. Brad stepped out first. Usually, he would wave and smile his politician smile, but today he looked like a cornered animal. He kept his head down, pushing through the microphones. Tisha followed him, wearing oversized sunglasses and a high collar that I knew was hiding the marks from his hands. When it was my turn to enter the courtroom, the bailiff led me in through the side door. The gallery was packed, shoulder to shoulder. I saw my mother sitting in the second row, her face pale and drawn. She looked at me for a split second before dropping her gaze to her lap. She was trapped in the middle of a war she had helped start, and now she was watching her family implode in real time. The Honorable Judge Stevens took the bench with a heavy sigh. He was an old-school judge, known for quick verdicts and a hatred for media spectacles. He banged his gavel to silence the murmuring crowd. Brad's lawyer, a man named Mr. Thorne, stood up. He was the most expensive defense attorney in the state, a man who wore $5,000 suits and had a reputation for shredding defendants until they begged for mercy. Thorne walked to the center of the floor, buttoning his jacket. He did not look at me. He pointed a finger toward the defense table, as if I were a contagion. Your Honor, we are here today to address a tragedy. The woman sitting before you, Zora Brooks, is not just a kidnapper. She is a menace to society. Driven by a pathological jealousy of her sister's success, she broke into a peaceful home in the dead of night and abducted a 6-year-old child. She terrified a little girl. She traumatized a loving mother. And now, she is attempting to manipulate public opinion with deep fake videos and AI-generated audio recordings released on the internet. I sat perfectly still. Thorne was good. He was already spinning the narrative Brad had concocted. He was dismissing the evidence before I even had a chance to present it. Thorne continued, his voice rising in theatrical outrage. We request that the court immediately seal all evidence and place a gag order on the defendant. We also ask that the bail be revoked and Ms. Brooks be remanded to custody until the conclusion of this trial. She is dangerous, Your Honor. She is unstable. And if she is allowed to walk free, she will continue to harass this upstanding family. My public defender, a young man named Mr. Henderson, was sweating profusely. He was shuffling papers, his hands shaking. He leaned over to me, whispering frantically, Zora, this is bad. Thorne is going for the jugular. If the judge revokes bail, you go straight to jail today. Maybe we should offer a plea. If we offer to take down the videos, maybe they will let you keep your freedom. I looked at Henderson. He was terrified. He was outmatched, and he knew it. He was ready to surrender before the first shot was fired. I looked across the aisle at Brad. He was staring at the table, refusing to meet my eyes, but I saw a small smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. He thought he had won. He thought his high-priced lawyer and his lies were going to bury me. I took a deep breath. The air in the courtroom smelled of lemon polish and old fear. I stood up. Mr. Henderson grabbed my arm. "Zora, sit down. You cannot speak out of turn." I pulled my arm away gently but firmly. I walked past him and stood in the center of the aisle. "Your Honor," I said, my voice clear and steady, cutting through the tension like a knife. Judge Stevens looked over his reading glasses, frowning. "Ms. Brooks, you have counsel. Sit down and let him speak for you." "I object, Your Honor," I said. "You object to what?" the judge asked, his irritation growing. "I object to my representation," I replied, not breaking eye contact with the bench. "Mr. Henderson is a fine lawyer for a traffic violation, but this is not a traffic violation. This is a conspiracy, and I cannot have an attorney who is afraid of the opposition." A gasp rippled through the gallery. Thorne turned around, looking at me with amusement. "Miss Brooks," the judge said, his voice stern, "this is a felony trial. You are facing 20 years in prison. Mr. Thorne is a veteran prosecutor. Do you really think it is wise to fire your attorney in the middle of a motion hearing?" I looked at Brad. I saw the smirk vanish from his face. He knew. He knew that if I spoke for myself, there would be no filters. There would be no plea deals. "I do not think it is wise, Your Honor," I said. "I think it is necessary. I am firing my attorney effective immediately. I will represent myself." The judge leaned back in his chair, studying me. He saw a woman in a simple dress, standing alone against a legal giant. He likely saw a lamb walking into a slaughterhouse. "Ms. Brooks," he said slowly, "I will grant your request because it is your constitutional right. But I am warning you. The court will show you no leniency. You will be held to the same standards as a professional attorney. If you make a mistake, there is no going back. Are you absolutely sure you want to do this?" I looked at the packed courtroom. I looked at Tisha, trembling in her seat. I looked at my mother, who was finally looking at me with something that resembled awe. And finally, I looked at Brad, whose eyes were wide with a dawning panic. I smiled. It was the smile of a woman who had already seen the end of the game. "I am sure, Your Honor," I said. "I do not need a lawyer. Lawyers are for people who need to spin a story. I do not need to spin anything. I have the truth. And by the time I am done, Mr. Thorne is going to wish he had stayed in bed this morning." I stood in the center of the courtroom, feeling the weight of every eye on me. My public defender was gone. The heavy oak doors had closed behind him, leaving me alone in the well of the court. Brad was leaning back in his chair, whispering something to his high-priced lawyer, Mr. Thorne, and they both chuckled. They thought this was over. They thought I was just a desperate woman prolonging the inevitable. They did not know that I had spent the last 72 hours dissecting their timeline with the precision of a surgeon. "I would like to call my first witness," I said, my voice echoing slightly in the high-ceilinged room. "I call Detective Ray Miller to the stand." Brad frozen mid-laugh. He looked at the detective who was sitting in the front row. Miller stood up, adjusting his tie. He walked to the witness stand with a swagger that made my blood boil. He was a big man, used to intimidation, used to being the authority that no one questioned. He sat down and swore to tell the truth, but I knew the truth was a foreign concept to him. "Detective Miller," I began walking toward the jury box so I could see his face clearly. "You were the arresting officer on the morning of Sunday, October 14th. Is that correct?" That is correct, Miller said, leaning into the microphone. I responded to a 911 call reporting a kidnapping in progress. And what time did you receive that call? I asked, keeping my tone polite. Miller glanced at his notes. The call came in from Mr. Brad Miller at 6 a.m. sharp. He reported that his daughter was missing and that you had taken her. And what time did you arrive at my apartment to arrest me? I arrived at 6:10 a.m., he said confidently. I was on patrol in the vicinity and responded immediately to the dispatch. I nodded slowly, pretending to digest this information. So just to be clear, Detective, you received a call at 6 a.m., you were in your patrol car, you drove to my apartment complex, parked, ran up 3 flights of stairs, and kicked down my door by 6:10 a.m. Is that your testimony? Yes, Miller said, looking bored. Like I said, I was in the area. I walked back to the defense table and picked up a single sheet of paper. It was not a legal document. It was a technical readout. Your Honor, I would like to submit Defense Exhibit A. This is a certified log from the Atlanta Police Department's Automatic Vehicle Locator System, also known as AVL. Thorne jumped up. Objection, Your Honor. We have not seen this evidence. The judge looked over his glasses. Miss Brooks is representing herself, Mr. Thorne, and since this is public record regarding police conduct, I will allow it. Continue, Miss Brooks. I handed the paper to the bailiff, who passed it to the detective. Detective Miller, I said, my voice dropping an octave, losing all traces of politeness. The AVL system tracks the GPS location of every police vehicle in the city every 30 seconds. It is designed to ensure officer safety and accountability. Can you please read the highlighted line for your vehicle, number 402? Miller looked at the paper. His swagger evaporated. He squinted at the numbers, and I saw a bead of sweat form on his upper lip. Read it, Detective, I commanded. It says Vehicle 402 arrived at the coordinates for the Peachtree apartment complex at 5:45 a.m. The courtroom went deadly silent. Even the court reporter stopped typing. 5:45 a.m., I repeated. That is 15 minutes before Brad Miller made the 911 call reporting his daughter missing. I stepped closer to the witness stand. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. Detective, how did you know to be parked outside my apartment 15 minutes before the crime was even reported? Did you have a psychic premonition? Or were you waiting for a signal? Miller stammered, his face turning a blotchy red. I might have been on a break. I just happened to be parked there. It was a coincidence. A coincidence? I asked, raising my voice. You parked outside the home of the suspect 15 minutes before the victim picked up the phone, and you just happened to be the one to kick down my door. I turned to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not police work. This is a setup. I spun back to Miller. You play golf with Brad Miller every Saturday, don't you, Detective? You are the godfather to his niece. Isn't it true that Brad Miller called you on your personal cell phone at 5:30 a.m. and told you to get ready because he was about to frame his sister-in-law? Objection! Thorne screamed, standing up so fast his chair fell over. Badgering the witness. Speculation. I am not speculating, Your Honor, I shouted over him, pointing at the detective. I am looking at the data. The police were waiting for me. They knew exactly what was going to happen because they helped plan it. Miller looked at Brad for help, but Brad was staring at the table, his face pale as a sheet. The detective looked at the judge, who was staring at him with a mixture of shock and fury. I did not, Miller stuttered, unable to form a complete sentence. The audience in the gallery erupted. People were gasping, whispering, pointing at the detective. My mother had her hand over her mouth, her eyes wide with horror as she realized the depth of the corruption. Judge Stevens banged his gavel. "Order! Order in this court!" But the damage was done. I looked at the jury. They were not looking at me like a criminal anymore. They were looking at Detective Miller like he was the one who belonged in handcuffs. And for the first time since this nightmare started, I saw fear in Brad's eyes. Real fear. Because he realized I was not just defending myself. I was hunting. The courtroom shifted as Detective Miller stepped down, his reputation in tatters. But the war was far from over. Mr. Thorne called his next witness, and the heavy doors opened to reveal my sister, Tisha. The transformation was calculated to perfection. Gone were the designer clothes and the arrogant posture. She was dressed in a modest pale blue cardigan that made her look younger and more fragile. She walked to the witness stand with her head bowed, clutching a tissue like a lifeline. When she sat down, she looked small against the dark wood of the stand, her eyes wide and filled with unshed tears. Thorne approached her with the gentleness of a grandfather. "Mrs. Miller, could you please tell the jury what happened on the night your daughter was taken?" Tisha took a shaky breath and began her performance. "It was the worst night of my life. I woke up and she was gone. My baby was gone. I felt like my heart had been ripped out of my chest. I sat in her room, holding her teddy bear, just praying that she was safe. I was so terrified I could not even move. I just cried and waited for the phone to ring." She dabbed at her eyes, and I saw several jurors in the front row nodding in sympathy. She was good. She had always been the golden child, the one who could cry on command and get exactly what she wanted. Thorne led her through the narrative, painting me as the jealous, barren sister who wanted to steal her happiness. By the time he finished, Tisha was sobbing softly, and the courtroom was thick with pity. Thorne sat down, looking smug. "Your witness, Miss Brooks." I stood up. I did not rush. I organized my papers on the table, giving the jury a moment to look at me, then at her. I walked to the podium, my face devoid of emotion. "Hello, Tisha." Tisha flinched, as if I had struck her. She looked at the judge. "Do I have to answer her?" "You do, Mrs. Miller," the judge said gently. "She is acting as her own attorney." I stepped closer. "You just testified that you were paralyzed with fear on the night of the incident. You stated, under oath, that you never left the house because you were waiting by the phone. Is that correct?" "Yes," Tisha whispered, her voice trembling. "I was too scared to leave. I just wanted my baby back." I nodded slowly. "So, if I told you that I have evidence placing you somewhere else at 10 o'clock that night, you would say I am lying." Tisha's eyes hardened for a fraction of a second. "I would say you are crazy. I was in Lily's room the whole night. Ask my husband. He saw me." I smiled. It was a cold, dangerous smile. "I do not need to ask your husband, Tisha. I think I will ask technology instead." I turned to the bailiff. "Your Honor, I would like to submit Defense Exhibit B. This is a verified security recording from the Hilton Downtown Hotel, time-stamped for Saturday, October 13th at 10:02 p.m. Thorne stood up to object, but he hesitated. He saw the confidence in my posture. He sat back down, knowing that objecting to video evidence often makes the jury more curious. I connected my laptop to the courtroom projector. The massive screen behind the witness stand flickered to life. The video was crisp and clear in high definition, 4K. It showed a hotel hallway lined with patterned carpet. The timestamp in the corner read 10:02 p.m. The elevator doors in the video opened. A woman stepped out. She was not wearing a modest blue cardigan. She was wearing a tight red dress and heels. She was laughing, her head thrown back in delight. "Is that you, Tisha?" I asked, my voice cutting through the silence. Tisha stared at the screen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. She could not deny it. Her face was clearly visible. I went to get some air," she stammered. "I needed to clear my head." "To get some air," I repeated mockingly. "Let us see who helped you breathe then." On the screen, a man stepped out of the elevator behind her. He wrapped his arm around her waist and pulled her close, kissing her neck. It was not Brad. It was an older man with silver hair and a distinctively expensive suit. A collective gasp ripped through the courtroom. I paused the video right on the man's face. "Who is that man, Tisha?" I asked, pointing at the frozen image. Tisha gripped the railing of the witness stand, her knuckles turning white. She looked at Brad, who was sitting at the defense table. Brad was not looking at her. He was staring at the screen, his face the color of ash. He knew exactly who that man was. "Answer the question, Mrs. Miller," the judge commanded. "It is Julian Smith," Tisha whispered, her voice barely audible. I turned to the jury. For those who do not know, Julian Smith is the managing partner of the marketing firm where Brad Miller works. He is also the primary donor for Brad's political campaign. I spun back to Tisha, my voice rising with righteous anger. "So let me get this straight. At 10 o'clock at night, while you claim you were paralyzed with grief over your missing daughter, you were actually at the Hilton Hotel drinking wine and entering room 304 with your husband's boss." "No!" Tisha screamed, tears streaming down her face, but this time they were real, terrified tears. "It is not what it looks like. We were just talking. We were discussing the campaign." "Discussing the campaign in a hotel room?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "Did the campaign require him to unzip your dress? Because I can play the next 5 minutes of footage from the hallway if you like." Brad made a sound like a wounded animal. He slumped forward, burying his face in his hands. He knew his life was over. The affair was embarrassing, but the political implication was fatal. His wife was sleeping with his biggest donor. Every dollar he had raised was now tainted. His reputation was incinerated. Tisha looked around the courtroom frantically. She saw the disgust in the jurors' eyes. She saw the reporters typing furiously on their phones. She saw our mother in the gallery, covering her eyes in shame. The walls were closing in, and she had nowhere left to run. She looked at me one last time, her eyes filled with pure hatred. "You ruined everything!" she shrieked. "You jealous, bitter witch!" Then her eyes rolled back in her head. Her knees buckled, and she collapsed onto the floor of the witness stand in a heap of pale blue fabric. It was a perfect, dramatic faint, worthy of a daytime soap opera. Pandemonium erupted. The judge banged his gavel, shouting for order. The bailiff rushed to Tisha's side, checking for a pulse. Thorne was shouting for a recess. I stood perfectly still in the center of the chaos, watching my sister lying on the floor. I did not move to help her. I simply closed my laptop and looked at Brad. He lifted his head from his hands and our eyes met. He was not looking at his wife. He was looking at me, with the hollow gaze of a man who realized he had just lost everything to the woman he called stupid. The first domino had fallen, and the crash was deafening. The paramedics wheeled my sister out of the courtroom on a stretcher, leaving a silence so heavy it felt like it would crush the lungs of everyone present. The judge called for a 10-minute recess, but I did not sit down. I stood at the defense table organizing my files, my hands moving with mechanical precision. I could feel Brad's eyes boring into the back of my skull. He was alone now. His wife had crumbled. His corrupt detective had been exposed. But Brad Miller was a narcissist, and narcissists never believe they have truly lost until the handcuffs click shut. When the judge returned and banged the gavel, signaling the resumption of trial, I turned to face the gallery. The reporters were leaning forward like wolves scenting blood. My mother was sitting with her head in her hands, weeping silently. It was time to finish this. "I call my final witness," I said, my voice ringing clear and cold. "I call Brad Miller to the stand." Brad stood up. He buttoned his suit jacket, adjusting his cuffs with a tremor he could not quite hide. He walked to the witness stand with his chin held high, trying to project the image of the aggrieved father, the wronged politician. But as he passed me, I smelled the sour stench of fear radiating off him. He sat down and swore to tell the truth, but his eyes were darting around the room looking for an exit that did not exist. "Mr. Miller," I began walking to the center of the well. "You have built your entire campaign for city council on the platform of family values and integrity. Is that correct?" Brad leaned into the microphone, his voice smooth and practiced. "That is correct, Miss Brooks. I believe in faith, family, and the law. Everything I have done has been to protect my daughter from your instability." I nodded slowly. "You claim that I kidnapped your daughter. You claim that I am a danger to this family. But isn't it true that the only danger to this family is your gambling debt?" "Objection!" Thorne shouted from the defense table. "Irrelevant!" "Overruled," the judge said sharply. "It goes to motive. Answer the question, Mr. Miller." Brad glared at me. "I do not have gambling debts. That is a lie manufactured by you to smear my reputation." "I see," I said. "And what about the house? My grandmother's house. Did you or did you not force me to sign a quitclaim deed transferring the property to you in exchange for dropping these kidnapping charges?" Brad smiled, a thin, cruel smile. "You came to my office begging for mercy, Zora. You offered me the house because you knew you were guilty. You wanted to buy your freedom. I simply accepted your offer to help you avoid prison." I walked back to my table and picked up a small flash drive. I held it up for the jury to see. "You have a very convenient memory, Brad. You seem to remember me begging, but you seem to have forgotten what you said to me right after I signed that paper. You forgot that in the state of Georgia, only one party needs to consent to a recording. And since I was consenting, I recorded our entire conversation." I plugged the drive into the laptop. Brad's face went from pale to a sickly shade of green. He started to stand up. "Your Honor," he stammered, This is illegal. That is a private conversation." "Sit down, Mr. Miller," the judge commanded, his voice leaving no room for argument. I pressed play. The audio boomed through the courtroom speakers, amplified so that every whisper was audible. It started with the sound of me crying, begging for a deal. Then came Brad's voice, arrogant and dismissive. "You sign this, and you waive all your rights to the property. The estate goes to the next of kin. That is you. That is us. That is the campaign money right there." The jurors gasped. Brad was gripping the edges of the witness stand, his knuckles white. But I was not done. I let the recording play to the end, to the moment I walked out the door. "Hey, Zora." And then the slur. The hateful, venomous words that stripped away his mask of respectability forever. "Do not ever think you are on my level. You are just like the rest of them. Stupid, black trash who should learn to stay in their place." The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a room where the air had been sucked out. The court reporter stopped typing. The jurors looked at Brad with expressions of pure revulsion. Even his own lawyer, Mr. Thorne, closed his eyes and lowered his head, knowing there was no coming back from this. I looked at Brad. He was frozen, staring at the speaker, as if he could not believe his own voice had betrayed him. "Stupid, black trash," I repeated, my voice quiet, but carrying to every corner of the room. "That is what you think of me, Brad. That is what you think of my family. That is what you think of the voters you are asking to elect you. You did not frame me because I took your daughter. You framed me because you needed my money to pay off your bookie, and you thought I was too inferior to fight back. You doctored that tape," Brad shouted, leaping to his feet. His face was twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated rage. "It is AI. It is a deep fake. I never said that." "Mr. Miller, sit down," the judge roared, banging his gavel. "No," Brad screamed. He was not looking at the judge. He was looking at me. His eyes were wild, bloodshot, and filled with a murderous hatred. "You ruined me, you bitch. You ruined everything." He did not think. He did not calculate. He just snapped. Brad vaulted over the railing of the witness stand. He moved with the terrifying speed of a man who had nothing left to lose. He lunged at me, his hands reaching for my throat, his teeth bared like a wild animal. "Zora, look out!" someone screamed from the gallery. I stood my ground, bracing myself for the impact. But before his fingers could graze my skin, a blur of motion intercepted him. Two bailiffs tackled him mid-air, slamming him into the floor right at my feet. The sound of his body hitting the wood was sickeningly loud. "Get off me, Brad!" howled, thrashing and kicking, trying to crawl toward me. "I will kill her. I will kill you, Zora!" Pandemonium erupted. The judge was shouting for order. Reporters were standing on benches trying to get a shot of the disgraced candidate being subdued. My mother was screaming Brad's name. I looked down at him. His expensive suit was torn. His face was pressed against the dirty floor, and his hands were being cuffed behind his back. He looked up at me, spitting and cursing. And in that moment of chaos, I felt a profound sense of peace. The monster was not under my bed anymore. He was at my feet, where he belonged. While the bailiffs were dragging a screaming Brad Miller out of the courtroom, and the gallery was buzzing with the shock of his violent outburst, my mind was miles away. I was thinking about a quiet suburban street where a convoy of black SUVs was currently pulling into the driveway of the Miller estate. I had timed the courtroom confrontation perfectly to coincide with the arrival of my private security team, led by Marcus, who was coordinating directly with the Atlanta Police Department's Special Response Team. I knew that the moment Brad was in custody, the immediate danger of a hostage situation escalating was gone. But my mother and niece were still trapped inside that house, and every second counted. Marcus later recounted the scene to me in vivid detail. The neighbors who had once looked down on me as the poor relation were peering out from behind their curtains as armored officers swarmed the manicured lawn. The front door, which Brad had reinforced with heavy-duty locks to keep his secrets in and the world out, did not stand a chance against the battering ram. The wood splintered with a thunderous crack that signaled the end of Brad's reign of terror. Officers flooded the foyer, guns drawn, clearing room by room with professional efficiency. The house was silent and cold. The air conditioning had been cranked down to freezing, a tactic Brad used to make his prisoners uncomfortable. Marcus led the first team straight to the kitchen, where the heavy door to the wine cellar was located. I had told them exactly where my mother was being held. They found the door deadbolted from the outside, just as I had heard over the phone. When they slid the bolt back and pulled the heavy door open, they found my mother sitting on the concrete floor in the dark. Linda Brooks, the woman who cared more about appearances than anything else in the world, was curled into a ball, shivering violently. Her expensive dress was ruined, and her mascara was smeared across her face. When the beam of the tactical flashlight hit her, she screamed, shielding her eyes, terrified that Brad had come back to finish what he started. It was Marcus who knelt beside her. He took off his tactical jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. He told her that she was safe and that Zora had sent him. My mother broke down then, weeping uncontrollably, repeating my name over and over again, as if it were a prayer for forgiveness. Upstairs, a female officer approached Lily's bedroom door. Unlike the violent entry downstairs, she knocked first. She called out Lily's name softly, telling her that her Auntie Zora had sent the police to help. There was a long pause before the sound of a small lock clicking open echoed in the hallway. Lily opened the door just a crack, peering out with wide, fearful eyes. She was still wearing the same clothes from 2 days ago, but she was clutching the blue book I had told her to find. The officer knelt down to eye level, assuring Lily that her father could not hurt her any more. Lily did not cry. She possessed a resilience that ran in our blood. She simply nodded and handed the book to the officer. She told her that she had a secret inside, just like her Auntie Zora said. The officer opened the book and pulled out the crumpled drawing. It was a child's drawing done in crayon, but it was more damning than any forensic report. It showed a stick figure of a mommy leaving the house with a moon in the sky and a clock on the wall pointing to 9. It showed a little girl crying alone in bed. And on the next page, it showed a daddy with angry red eyebrows hitting the mommy while the little girl hid under the covers. Back in the courtroom, the air was thick with tension. Judge Stevens had retreated to his chambers during the chaos, but he returned to the bench just as a court clerk hurried in from the side entrance. The clerk was breathless, carrying a tablet and a sealed evidence bag that had just been rushed over by a courier from the scene. He handed the items to the judge, whispering urgently. The judge listened, his expression darkening with every word. He looked at the digital image of the drawing that had been sent over and read the initial report from the scene commander, confirming that Linda Brooks had been found locked in a basement cell. The judge looked up. The anger in his eyes was gone, replaced by a profound sorrow for the tragedy that had unfolded. He looked at Mr. Thorne, who was sitting alone at the defense table, his head in his hands. Then he looked at me. For the first time since the trial began, he did not look at me with suspicion or annoyance. He looked at me with respect. "Ms. Brooks," the judge said, his voice quiet but amplified through the silent room. "The court has just received confirmation from the Atlanta Police Department. Your mother and niece have been secured and are being transported to the hospital for evaluation. We have also received physical evidence recovered by the officers on scene, which corroborates the timeline of events you presented." A murmur went through the crowd. Reporters were typing furiously. The judge continued. "This drawing recovered from your niece's possession. indicates a history of domestic violence and child neglect that predates this incident. Combined with the testimony we heard today and the defendant's own violent behavior in this courtroom, I have seen enough. He took off his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. I am revoking Mr. Miller's bond immediately. He will remain in custody pending a full grand jury indictment for kidnapping, false imprisonment, assault, and child endangerment. Furthermore, I am issuing an emergency temporary custody order for the minor child, Lily Miller. He looked directly at me. Ms. Brooks, are you prepared to take immediate custody of your niece? I stood up, my legs feeling a little weak now that the adrenaline was fading. I thought of Lily holding that blue book, waiting for me to save her. I thought of the promise I made to her through the baby monitor. Yes, Your Honor, I said, my voice breaking slightly. I am ready to take her home. The judge nodded. Then the order is granted. This court is adjourned. He banged the gavel, and the sound rang out like a church bell signaling the end of the war. I turned around and walked toward the doors, not as a defendant, but as a guardian. My sister had called the police to destroy me, but instead, she had given me the keys to the kingdom, and now I had a little girl to raise. 6 months have passed since the day the gavel fell and shattered the illusion of the Miller family perfection. The seasons have changed in Atlanta, turning the humid heat of summer into the crisp gold of autumn. But the biggest change is not the weather. It is the house at the end of Oak Street. The colonial mansion that my grandmother built and that Brad tried to steal is no longer a monument to family greed. It has a new name now. We call it the Lily House. I stood on the front lawn, watching the contractors hang the final sign. The house has been fully renovated, not as a private residence, but as a sanctuary. I used my own money, the fortune I had hidden for so long, to buy the property outright from the estate. Then I poured another $1 million into transforming it. It is now a high-security transition center for women and children escaping domestic violence. It is a place where mothers like the one Tisha pretended to be can find actual safety and legal protection. And the security system is, of course, state-of-the-art, provided personally by Z-Shield Solutions. I am no longer hiding in the shadows. The trial forced me into the spotlight, and I decided to stay there. I came out publicly as the CEO of my company, using the media attention to launch a foundation for victims of legal abuse. The world knows now that Zora Brooks is not the black sheep. She is the shepherd. Across town in a dingy diner near the interstate, the lunch rush was just ending. The air smelled of stale grease and burnt coffee. My sister Tisha wiped down a sticky table, her feet aching in cheap shoes. She had lost everything. Her marriage was annulled after Brad's conviction. Her social status evaporated the moment the truth came out. The friends she thought she had, the women she lunched with at the country club, stopped returning her calls the day she was exposed as an accomplice. She was currently serving probation for filing a false police report, and this waitressing job was the only one she could get. Above the counter, a small television was playing the local news. Tisha looked up as the anchor announced the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Lily House. The screen showed me standing on the podium, looking strong and radiant in a tailored suit holding Lily's hand. Lily looked happy, healthy, and safe. Tisha froze, the rag dripping dirty water onto the floor. She watched as a reporter asked me a question. Ms. Brooks, you were vilified by your own family. How did you find the strength to forgive and move on? On the screen, I smiled. I did not move on for myself. I moved on for my niece. Breaking the cycle of toxicity is the only way to ensure the next generation survives.
We do not hate the people who hurt us. We just outgrow them. Tisha stared at the screen, her face twisting with a mixture of jealousy and regret. She looked around the empty diner at her stained apron, and then back at the sister she had called a failure. She wanted to scream. She wanted to tell the customers that she was the pretty one, that she was the one who deserved the mansion. But nobody was looking at her. She was invisible. Just another waitress in a roadside diner. She turned away, unable to watch anymore, and went back to scrubbing the table. Back at the house, the cameras had gone. The sun was setting, casting a warm orange glow over the porch. I sat on the swing, pushing it gently back and forth. Lily was sitting next to me, drawing in a new sketchbook. She was no longer drawing angry eyebrows or crying girls. She was drawing a superhero with long braids and a shield. "Auntie Zora?" she asked, looking up with bright, clear eyes. "Is Daddy ever coming back?" I wrapped my arm around her, pulling her close. "No, baby. He is going to be away for a very long time. You are safe now. Nobody is ever going to lock you in a room again." Lily rested her head on my shoulder. "I like our new house. It feels happy." "It is happy," I whispered, kissing the top of her head. I looked out over the lawn where women were walking with their children, feeling safe for the first time in years. My mother was not there. She had moved to a retirement community in Florida, too ashamed to face the wreckage of the family she had enabled. Brad was serving his 15-year sentence in a maximum security facility. Tisha was serving hers in the prison of her own mediocrity. I had lost the family I was born into, but I had built the family I deserved. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the cool evening air. It tasted like freedom. Thank you for listening to my story. If you have ever been underestimated by the people who were supposed to love you, remember that your worth is not defined by their opinion. It is defined by your resilience. Please like and subscribe for more stories of justice and truth. And always remember, the best revenge is not destroying your enemies. It is living a life so beautiful that they cannot look away. Zora's journey teaches us that betrayal by blood is not a life sentence. It is often the catalyst for our greatest transformation. When the people who should protect you choose to harm you, you possess the power to build the family you actually deserve. True justice isn't found in bitter revenge, but in using your pain to create a sanctuary for others, proving that the black sheep often holds the most integrity. If this story inspired you to stand in your own truth, please like this video and subscribe for more tales of resilience. Share this with someone who needs to remember their own strength today.